All right, today our lecture is going to be about ancient Sparta. So last week, you should have done the Athens versus Sparta assignment, where you did the readings over at the Athenian culture and then also the Spartan culture. Today, we're just simply going to focus on Sparta. So let's get to it here. Okay. So Sparta, you can see right here, located in the middle of the Peloponnese Peninsula. Not all that large. Had population of about 100,000 people. So again, not all that many people in Sparta. Now, the country of Greece itself is actually relatively small. Uh, you could compare it to the size of the state of Georgia. They're very similar in size there. So again, even though Greece is very small, we're able to see the impact that this country is able to have in being one of the most dominant forces in the Mediterranean during this time as well. And one of the best militaries that we've seen in world history is that of the Spartan military, because again, it is a militaristic culture. But the main thing I want to get to is why. Why are they so militaristic? Again, it's almost like a militaristic cult where their entire lives revolve around the military. It's very interesting. So first, one of the main reasons why they're militaristic is because they have a rocky terrain. And this rocky terrain is obviously unsuitable for farming. Therefore, you need to go out and conquer to get farmland. They're also located in the middle of the Peloponnese Peninsula, as you saw right here. So again, you're kind of too far inland to trade. You're too far inland to fish. So again, how are you going to get your food? So they would actually go out and conquer other places and make those people their slaves because they were just stronger and they had a better military than those people they conquered. And those people, those slaves, would work on their farms and give Sparta their food. Now, also, the slaves are less likely to revolt if you have a strong military presence. Sparta is actually outnumbered by slaves 8 to 1. So just think about that. For every one Spartan, they had 8 slaves. So if the slaves wanted to revolt, they could, but that's why Sparta kept a strong militaristic culture to prevent that from occurring. Now, again, revolts did occur. Some were somewhat successful, most of them were not. And the slaves were called helots or helots, which is meant to capture. Okay, so again, you have no farmland. You're too far inland to trade, too far inland to fish. So again, you went out and conquered other states. They conquered the Messenians. Again, slaves, like I said earlier, were called helots or helots, which just means capture. They also went out and conquered the Laconians as well, and they used their land for farming. And then they can get access to water from their land as well. So again, going out and expanding the Spartan territory. So what was Spartan life like? First was very simple. You didn't have luxuries. When we looked at Athens, again, Athens was a classical culture. They were a great trading empire. They had a bunch of wealth. Therefore, you had artwork. You had all these fancy architecture all around the place. Sparta, that's not really the case. Everyone was supposed to remain the same. So you weren't supposed to travel outside of your city state unless if you were going to battle or going to war. The whole point is you want to prevent foreign ideas from infiltrating your culture. In other words, you want people to remain militaristic. If people were to travel to a different city state or to a different country and they see the way those people are living, well, it's going to be hard to keep up your harsh militaristic lifestyle if people see other freedoms, and other things that other people are able to do. So they prevented their people from traveling outside the city state whenever possible. Education. Uh, Historians still debate what they were actually educated on. Some believe they were actually taught how to read and write. Others dispute that, saying they were even taught math, and some of them dispute that, saying they weren't taught anything. It was just military. So, again, take that with a grain of salt, because some historians debate what they were actually taught. However, they do not debate that women were actually educated. Again, keep in mind the men are basically training for war, or they're at the military barracks, or they're at a battle. They're away from home quite often, so it was up to the women, basically, to run the household. They were taught wrestling and they were taught self-defense again because a lot of times men were out at battle or out at war, so women needed to be able to defend themselves as well. And women were actually able to speak in front of men. Women actually in Sparta had quite a bit of freedom compared to other places during this time period. And Spartans were only taught to speak when necessary. This whole idea of small talk, or if you see somebody talk about the weather, that it wasn't a thing in Sparta. Okay, you only spoke when absolutely necessary. A lot of Spartans, even when they were walking around, would walk around with their heads down just to remain obedient, not get into anybody else's business and chat up their day. The meals. Spartan meals were usually ate in community halls, not always, but a lot of times they're ate in community halls, to prove that no one was eating better than the others. Even the king would sometimes, eat in these community halls as well. And one of the most famous meals that they would usually eat would be Spartan broth, which is just a piece of pork that's boiled in animal blood with salt and vinegar. Maybe you'd get a piece of bread, and that'd be it. So again, just to prove that everyone is equal, that nobody is better than anybody else. Now here's where things get really interesting. Is that the government? So basically, when you are giving birth, okay, you are giving birth for the state. You're giving birth for the country, or for the city state, I should say. You're not giving birth for your family and for your enjoyment. Okay, you're trying to birth males as much as possible, so you have a stronger and a larger military. Now the problem is that the government only wants healthy and athletic children, and what would happen is when you were giving birth, you would have a state doctor there, and they would basically put this baby, this newborn infant, through a quote unquote fitness test. Now, they're not like running around and doing anything like that because they can't do that, but what they're doing is they're inspecting the baby, looking for a healthy baby, looking for any deformities. If the baby looks weak, or puny, or has a deformity, the baby would be left at a sacred hillside to die, because you're only as strong as your weakest link, and a weak baby is therefore useless to Sparta. Okay, so again, you might have carried around this baby for 9 months, you give birth, the government decides that this baby is too small, it will not be any benefit to Sparta, therefore they will leave it at the sacred hillside to die. Now, from birth to age 7, you will live with your parents. You live, I guess, whatever you want to call it, somewhat of a normal life at that point. But at age 7, you are taken from your parents and you are going to be sent to Agoge training. This is basically a military camp where you're going to train for 13 years, 12 to 13 years, and you will train every single day. Okay, you're not going to get any breaks. You train 365. So, in this Agoge training, when you get there, you're usually taught, how to wrestle, hand-to-hand combat. You're actually taught how to steal. Sometimes you're fed insufficient food because when you're out at war, you might have to learn how to steal as well. You weren't punished for stealing. You're only punished if you were caught stealing. And the older you got, the more progressive the training became. You would incorporate weapons later on in training as well, and sometimes Spartans would even die in the training. But if you can't survive the training, how are you gonna be able to survive an actual battle? Okay, so uh, I'll post this video separate so you can watch it as well. I highly recommend watching the video because it kind of goes through Agoge training and shows what the kids actually went through. It's very, very interesting. They even had something called flogging competitions where they would basically take two boys, sometimes, very young, and they would tie their hands up against a pole. They would take their shirt off just so their back is exposed. And then you would have an older military member there basically whipping their backs. And it'd be a competition to see who could last the longest. And sometimes your family was even there to watch, and they're cheering you on, so you don't, bring dishonor to your family. So again, just boys being whipped in their backs as to teaching you to strengthen and not to cry. So again, just different times. Now, so again, the older you got, you would often fight and practice battles, and at the age of 18, you'd become a member of Cryptia. And what Cryptia is, it's a secret military force, and this force was used to spy and then occasionally murder a slave to keep the slaves in line. So you do that, those would be your final years of training. Then at age 20, you became a hoplite, and hoplite is Greek for foot soldier. Okay, so at age 20, you can become a soldier. Sometimes the test to become a soldier would be you had to kill a slave. Again, not always, but sometimes that was the test. Now, what did a Spartan hoplite look like? Because uh, some of us might know what a soldier or what we think Greek soldiers looked like from the movie 300. We'll get to that movie later. It's just completely inaccurate. And what they actually wore would be just like this depiction is showing you here. So they would have a chest plate. They would have the shin guards as well. You would be giving a shield. You were given a plumed helmet, and this is one of the more famous looks that we see. Obviously, if you know like Michigan State Spartans, you could see like that's their logo. Now, the interesting thing about the plumed helmet and why they have, these bristles up top here is because an average Spartan soldier was about 5'6" to 5'8", at about 155 pounds. Okay, so not very big. Again, that's just the average size of all of the soldiers. So what they would do is they would wear these plumed helmets to make the soldiers look a little bit taller. And it's really the only reason they wear it. There's no other benefit to wearing this plumed helmet, just to make you look a little bit more intimidating to your enemies. Each Spartan soldier was equipped with a short sword, which you can see right here. And then you were given an 8 to 15-foot spear, depending on where you were located at in the phalanx. And here is their main fighting formation known as the phalanx. And what the phalanx is you can see how close that all soldiers are located. Obviously, if you're in the back of the phalanx, you'll be given a longer spear, front, shorter, blah, blah, blah. The purpose of this is because, again, Sparta, again, a population of 100,000 people, doesn't have that large of an army. If you're going against like a country of Persia, who outnumbers your army 25 to 1, well, you need to be able to fight against this enemy. So they would stay close together here. And the purpose is, one, it's hard to penetrate when you are so close together. Two, for arrows, if you were to face an arrow barrage, you would kneel down and you would put your shield above you, and your shield would protect you, the soldier to your left, and the soldier to your right as well. Spartans didn't believe in using arrows. They thought arrows were a weak weapon and that you were a weak soldier if you were to use them because you're fighting from far away, and basically they believed it was a cowardly weapon. Spartans wouldn't use those. They would prefer to get up close and face you for hand-to-hand combat. Finally, because again, some of us know about Sparta because of the movie 300 that came out, I don't know, late, like 2008-ish maybe. Uh, the movie 300 is actually based off of a real battle, and that's the Battle of Thermopylae. In the movie, again, they make this glory that was just 300 Spartans, which isn't true. They're helped by other Greek soldiers as well as Athenian fleets that are destroying Persian fleets as well. But King Leonidas, the main character in the movie, will choose to fight the Persian immortals. Again, we talked about immortals way earlier in the year. Again, they're not actually immortal, but the Persian army always had a standing army of 10,000 people. As soon as one died, they're immediately replaced. So it felt like you're, battling these immortal soldiers. But in the movie, Xerxes is coming to take over Greece, and the 300 soldiers and the rest of the Greek soldiers and the Athenian fleet are trying to hold them at what the Greeks call the Hot Gates, which is a narrow passageway to try to defeat the Persians. So again, the battle did actually occur, but the way the movie shows it is just completely inaccurate. I can go on and on about the inaccuracies of that movie, but it still is an entertaining movie to watch. I'll leave it at that. So if you do want to watch it, it used to be on Netflix. I don't know if it is anymore. But so that's it for Sparta. Again, make sure you go back and watch that video that I'll post on Google Classroom because it does kind of go a little bit more in depth about the Agoge training as well.